It didn't start with fire or blood. It started with a feeling deep in the bones, across states and screens and scarred hands. They came, not summoned, just called. This is part 1 of the Sigil Series. The Seeds Are Sown. Women who had gotten onto the witchtok trend had to abandon ship after the bans. Some shifted to more covenant-friendly content, but most disappeared from social media entirely. Lila never flinched. She just rebranded. The Covenant called it a crackdown on unapproved influences, but everyone knew what it really meant. There would be no more spell jars, no more ancestor veneration, no more women looking each other in the eye and remembering they were powerful. "Let them take the torches," Lila wrote in a now-deleted post. "We'll light our candles inside." And quietly, beneath the noise, the spell net was born. It wasn't a site or an app, not something that you could download or share. It was a pulse, something felt in your bones, something that filled your lungs with breath and a memory of what could be. So Lila, bless her ambition, pivoted. She posted a new profile banner that read, "Wives of the Word, healing the home in His name." She launched a tutorial series called Sanctified Self-Care that quickly earned her 25,000 new followers. Each upload began with a gentle guitar riff and a whisper of Proverbs 31. Every caption and hashtag quoted themed scripture. The audience ate it up, and her following kept growing. The ingredients came straight from her garden. Rosemary for remembrance, which she called biblical balm. Lavender for calm, renamed heaven's hush. Mugwort, which she quietly labeled mother's mercy. And chamomile, sweetly rebranded as Christ's comfort. "God made the herbs," she told her audience, smiling. "We're just using his gifts, y'all." She smiled in every frame, even when it didn't quite reach her eyes. And not one government bot, not a single covenant enforcement officer flagged a thing. She looked like the perfect little homemaker, a good traditional wife, exactly what a woman should aspire to be. And the women flocked to her channel, even when they didn't know why they were drawn to her videos. Lila made it look like homemaking and sound like devotion, but it was neither. What it really was planting the seeds of a new beginning. And quietly, beneath the noise, the spell net grew, not from code, not from screens, but from women who remembered, and those just starting to. The mats at the community center still smelled like rubber and lavender. Coach Rena had sprinkled dried sage in the corners again, and nobody called her on it. Not since the Tuesday night class started pulling in numbers, and not since the bruises started healing faster on the women who showed up. It was listed on the schedule as Faithful Women's Fitness, Strength for the Soul. Technically, it was still just kickboxing, but no one left her class the same. "All right, girls," Rena called, tying her locks back with a red bandana. "Let's talk about what to do when a man twice your size puts his hands on you." No one laughed. They were a mix of ages, some in hoodies and leggings, some in faded uniforms, some in ankle-length skirts like they'd come straight from evening service. A few were pregnant. One had a black eye she didn't explain. Rena didn't ask. "Feet shoulder-width apart," she said. "Ground yourself. Feel where you're planted." The room quieted. Bare soles kissed the floor. The hum beneath them wasn't just the AC. "Now the breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Let the fear go out with it." They moved in unison, spines straightened, hands flexed. "When he comes at you, center. Block, strike, step back, pivot, close the circle." Rena demonstrated, slow and fluid. Her hands sliced the air in a pattern with just enough curve, enough rhythm, enough intent. They didn't know it yet, but they were casting. Every woman in that room was drawing a ward with her body. Every punch was laced with the salt of their own sweat. Every breath grounded them into something deeper than lungs and bone. "Again!" Rena barked. They moved together, and for a flicker of a second, the lines on the old mat seemed to glow. "Ground, breathe, strike, step back, close the circle." It looked like fitness, but felt like freedom. A defense older than fists and far harder to quell. Rena left the gym in silence. She didn't need words for what she felt rising. She just followed the pull in her chest and let it take her through back alleys and side streets, past shuttered shops and painted over murals that still whispered when you walked by. It took her home, but not to her own. The shed behind Marcus Ellery's trailer smelled like cedar, bruised mint, and old pain. He moved slow, not because he was old, but because he respected what his hands were doing. A root doesn't like to be rushed, and neither did memory. He tied the final sprig of yarrow into the bundle, his thick fingers nimble despite the scars. One hand was missing the tip of his ring finger. The other had a tattoo faded into a blur, an old unit number no one asked about anymore. Wind rustled the beaded curtains behind him. They weren't there for show. Neither were the oyster shells nailed above the doorway, or the jar of crushed eggshells tucked behind the aloe. A knock came at the shed's frame, 3 soft raps and 1 firm. Rena's knock.
"Door's open,"
he called without turning. She stepped inside, damp with sweat and tension. Her knuckles were red. She looked like she'd been punching iron.
"Trouble?"
he asked, already reaching for his balm. She hesitated.
"Can you feel it?"
she whispered.
"Something moving under all this."
Marcus looked up then. His eyes were soft but sharp, like a blade kept for good reasons.
"Baby girl,"
he said.
"There's always something moving under us. But this time..."
He touched 2 fingers to her sternum, light and reverent.
"This time, it's listening back."
She didn't flinch when he pressed. The ache in her chest melted like frost.
"You still remember what I taught you?"
he asked. She nodded.
"Ground, breathe, strike, step back, close the circle."
Marcus grinned.
"Good. Then you already know the spell."
There were others who felt it before they understood it, before they believed in it. Not all of them cast spells. Some just noticed the static. Owen Tran didn't believe in magic. He believed in compression artifacts, corrupted code, encryption layering, and anomalies with names. Belief was for people who didn't have a debugger window open across 3 monitors. But this was not a bug. He sat cross-legged in his cluttered living room, light from a dozen screens painting his pale face in glitchy blue. The walls were lined with books, physics, folklore, data security, and poetry in various states of being read and discarded. An empty ramen cup sat next to a post-it that said, "Buy marigolds? ? He didn't remember writing that. On the center screen, he froze a frame from a YouTube video, some influencer with soft music pouring tea. At first glance, nothing, but frame by frame, the steam curved. Not randomly, intentionally. A triple spiral. It was subtle, but it was like it had bloomed there. He leaned closer, typing furiously, pulling the metadata, the file names, the encryption headers. Not one matched. And this wasn't the first time he'd caught it. He had folders now, all tagged with pattern A, clockwise bloom, and audio pulses and layered voices, and his personal favorite, non-existent file origins. He clicked a saved clip. There was silence, then static, then there was a voice. Not just one, but not sure how many, saying, Bind yourself to the serpent. Bind yourself to the serpent. She rises in the root work. She rises in the root work. Owen didn't breathe for 6 seconds. He opened his code sandbox and began writing. A signal sniffer, a data mapper, a tracer for the whispers. Because if this was real, someone needed to see it coming. There was something holy about Miss Tony's salon. Not the kind with choirs and pulpits, but the kind with cedar smoke in the corners and salt tucked under the welcome mat. After the Covenant came calling one evening, she started using phrases like headship-approved beauty and Proverbs 31 pampering. The braids stayed, so did the oils, but now they came with scripture and branding words like restorative femininity. Her place was called the Beauty Mark, tucked between a payday loan office and an old church that hadn't had power since the last big flood. It was all faded pinks, gold-framed mirrors, glittered floor tiles, and Beyoncé humming low from the speaker. The door had a little bell, and the minute it rang, Miss Tony always knew who needed a trim and who needed a cleanse. You want layers, baby, or you want to feel like yourself again? Half the women who sat in her chair didn't know the difference. Tony's fingers moved like a prayer. She rubbed rosemary oil onto the temples, clipping away dead ends and grief in the same careful snip. She whispered protection into the curls, brushed heartbreak from the roots. Sometimes she braided charms into the hairline, small ones, hidden ones, just because something told her that woman would need it. She never charged extra for that. Her spell work lived in the ritual, the cape, the steam, the stillness, the way she looked you in the eye through the mirror and said, "You're safe now. Just breathe." Some of her clients came back week after week for the same cut they didn't even need, not for the style, for the sanctuary. Now Miss Eunice, she had her own way of coping with the changes. She didn't change a thing about her social media. She didn't have to. She didn't have any. She kept things to herself and the dirt. She did start calling her moon planting Sabbath prep, just in case any busybodies were about. The soil in Miss Eunice's garden was warm today. That was a good sign. She pressed her knees into the kneeling cushion and adjusted her sun hat. Her hands were already dirty, just the way she liked them. Earth under her nails, a little green stain on her apron. She hummed as she worked. a tune no one remembered but her. To anyone passing by, she was just another old black woman with a garden full of greens and gossip. And that's exactly how she liked it. Eunice planted in threes, always had. 3 rows of collards, 3 rows of tomatoes, 3 kinds of basil, 3 pinches of ash under the roots, 3 whispered names, 1 for the past, 1 for the future, and 1 for whoever needed protection now. "This here's a prayer garden," she told the mailman once when he asked her about the marigolds. "I just let the Lord sort out the rest." He chuckled and kept on walking. He didn't see the bones buried in the rosemary, or the sigil carved into the compost bin under the broken Bible verse. Didn't notice how the wind never touched her sunflowers, or how the birds never crapped on her porch. Eunice wasn't on TikTok. She didn't even have Wi-Fi. But every now and then, a young woman would show up, quiet on her porch, with swollen eyes and shaking hands. And Eunice would just say, "Oh, honey, you come on now and help me weed," and hand her a trowel. The garden always knew what to do with grief. Out past the bayou and just shy of the county line, Reverend Jared Cole still held sunrise service every Sunday. No building, no live stream, no approval. Just folding chairs, coffee, and whoever needed a reason to keep showing up. The sun hadn't cracked the horizon yet, but the folding chairs were already out. They were mismatched, some rusted, some padded, some made of wicker that creaked like an old hymn, but they all faced the same way, toward the woods. No pulpit, no stained glass, just the mist curling between the cypress trees and a scattering of lanterns clipped to low branches. Reverend Jared Cole stood at the edge of that clearing, Bible in one hand, thermos of chicory in the other. He wore boots dusted with river silt and a coat too long for the weather. He always dressed like the forecast might turn on him. A few women sat quietly already, hands clasped, eyes steady. Some bowed their heads. Others watched the trees.
"I know the sky don't look like much yet,"
Jared said softly, voice like wet stone and firewood.
"but the light's coming. She always does."
He didn't shout his sermons. He breathed them.
Psalm 46 says, "God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved." And some folks think that means the church. But I say, look around you. She ain't brick and mortar. She is you.
His eyes moved gently across a small circle. Braids, wrinkles, bruised knuckles, tired shoulders, strong backs.
God don't just speak in tongues. He speaks in tea leaves, in roots, in a woman's no. And sometimes he don't speak at all. He listens. And right now, I think he's listening to y'all.
There were quiet nods. Someone passed a cloth-covered basket down the row with warm cornbread wrapped in a paper towel. Communion didn't always look like wine and wafers. Jared closed his Bible, didn't quote another word, but when the wind shifted through the trees, it carried the faintest hum, like someone somewhere was singing, and one of the women mouthed a single word, "Amen." It began with a dream, or a glitch, or was it a feeling so deep in the ribs that it might have been a breath, might have been even grief? No one called it a summons, not out loud, but across counties, across states, across screens and soil and scarred hands, they came. Rena folded the paper 3 times and tucked it into her boot. She didn't tell the other instructors why she was canceling class, just locked up the gym behind her, each step heavy with memory and movement. She left the speaker on. It looped her voice, recorded by accident during a late-night drill.
Ground, breathe, strike, step back, close the circle.
A rhythm, a chant, a prayer hiding in plain sound. Lila packed light, just her oils, her cards, and a worn paperback copy of the Herbalist Almanac, its margins filled with spiral sketches and pressed petals. The new comet had returned the night before. North by trees, east by water, the field remembers. No user, no trace, just those words. But she knew what it meant. Something had opened. She didn't bother closing the drawer, just grabbed her satchel, slipped the almanac inside, and tucked her deck in the zippered pocket. Then she posted one final video, soft focus, her in the garden. Hands picking lavender, music low. The caption read, "This journey has brought me such healing, and I hope it has for all you as well. More to come." The hashtags were just random words and directions. Strangely, though, some women swore the right ones jumped right out at them, like they'd been written just for them. Her smile was real this time. She knew she wouldn't be back, and others would come to find her. Tony closed the salon early, left the back in 15 sign up, even though she knew she wouldn't be, packed her old kit, combs, scissors, braid thread, and a little bottle of rosemary oil she only used when it meant something. Her mirror shimmered just for a moment. It showed 5 people standing in a field under a violet sky. One of them was her. One wasn't born yet. She smiled, locked the door. The field would find her. Miss Eunice was already on her porch, a canvas satchel set by her feet, full of seeds wrapped in handkerchiefs and jars of vegetables freshly canned for the trip. Her shovel leaned by the step. Her apron was clean. When Marcus pulled up in his old truck, she didn't greet him. She just handed him a sprig of lemon balm and said, "You feel it too?" He nodded.
"Weather's about to change."
Eunice looked up at the sky.
"No, baby. Everything is."
Marcus Doc Ellery brought out the maps. He had marked the coordinates from Owen's tracer logs, satellite glitches, unexplained data surges, anomalies no one else noticed. He tucked a root bundle into his coat pocket, its scent grounding him like a heartbeat. He never said goodbye to anyone. Owen Tran didn't travel well. He hated crowds, hated sunlight. But when the Triskelion symbol flashed across his cracked backup phone, coordinates blinking, he knew.
"This isn't code,"
he whispered, barely breathing.
"This is summoning."
He packed his laptop, 3 portable chargers, and a USB drive labeled "Do Not Open Until." Then he added a packet of marigold seeds, just in case. Jared Cole was the last to arrive. He didn't follow a map, didn't need a signal. He followed a psalm that had rewritten itself in his Bible, not in ink, in shadow, in feeling. He found the field at dusk, half wild, ringed in trees, quiet as a breath that was held too long. The others were already there, some standing, some kneeling, one weeping, He didn't want to interrupt. He watched as they found their places. No one called roll or gave any orders. They moved like they already knew where they belonged. They didn't draw a circle. The land had already done that for them. Trees bowed inward. The grass grew in a spiral. Stones hummed if you touched them long enough. It was a natural ring. They took their places without being told. Rena stood in the north, hands calloused, spine tall. Tony took the east, her oil-slick fingers brushing a braid behind her ear. Marcus stood in the south, a strip of sage in one fist and comfrey in the other. Miss Eunice faced west, whispering something to the dirt. Lila knelt in the center, eyes closed, bowl of salt and lavender topped with a lit candle in her lap. Owen stood just outside the ring, laptop open, fingers trembling. Jared Cole stayed close to the tree line, outside the circle, one hand pressed to the bark, like he needed to feel the roots humming through it. Nobody spoke at first. There was only wind and breath, and the sound of the cicadas screaming in the dark. Then Lila opened her eyes. Just a flicker. Just enough. She didn't look at anyone, only at the bowl in her lap. The lavender moved in the salt like something answered, and she whispered, "Blessed be the roots that never burned." Rena heard it, felt it, like a breath moving through her ribs. She straightened and said, "Blessed be the breath that broke the silence." Tony's breath joined, soft and smoky. "Blessed be the beauty they couldn't brand away." Miss Eunice placed a coin into the soil at her feet. It vanished like the dirt drank it. "Blessed be the names they made us forget." Marcus' hand tightened around the herbs he held. He didn't speak, just threw the sage into the center. The smoke curled down instead of rising. Lila's lips moved again. No one heard the words, but the candle in her bowl flared, then steadied. And that's when Jared finally spoke, quiet, certain, like he was finishing something that had started long ago.
"Blessed be the hands and bodies that fed the flames."
Owen's screen blinked once, then filled with words he hadn't typed. He whispered, "She is awake. Begin!" No one told them what to do, but their bodies knew. Rena struck the air, hands slicing through breath. Tony braided red thread and tied it around her wrist. Eunice scattered seeds into the ring of stones. Marcus pressed 2 fingers into the dirt like he was finding a pulse. Lila stirred the bowl clockwise, her candle flickering like it knew the rhythm. Jarrett closed his eyes and whispered the new psalm. And Owen, his screen fizzled, then froze, and every device for 10 miles glitched, then fell silent. The spell net pulsed. The ground warmed. Something below them exhaled, and in that moment, every woman across the country who had ever stirred a cup of tea while praying for escape, every man who had ever held space instead of power, every person who had ever felt the edge of something ancient in their bones. They felt it. The beginning. The circle didn't close. It opened. You don't have to be a witch to feel something when you hear this. You just have to look around and notice what doesn't feel right. So if your breath caught, if your hands tingled, if something deep in your bones whispered, yes, then this story is just for you, because it isn't just fiction. It's a remembering. The circle didn't close, it opened, and there's a place in it for you. Thanks for listening to the Seeds Are Sown, Part 1 of the Sigil Series. If you felt something, come back next Monday for Part 2, The Roots Remember. Sweet dreams if you can find them. I'll see you here next time on DeadtimeStoriesHQ.